The Walking Dead is a show about survival, about what happens when civilization collapses, and the rules we lived by become meaningless. It's about watching good people make impossible choices, about the line between human and monster getting thinner with every episode. And at the center of Season 2 is Shane Walsh, Rick Grimes' best friend, his partner, the man who saved his family when the world ended, the man everyone remembers as the villain. But here's what makes Shane fascinating. He wasn't wrong. Almost everything he said about survival turned out to be true. Rick spent the next 8 seasons becoming exactly what Shane already was. The tragedy isn't that Shane was a villain, it's that he was right, and no one was ready to hear it. Shane Walsh was a good man. That's important to establish. Before the outbreak, he was a sheriff's deputy in King County, Rick's partner, his best friend since childhood, the guy who had his back. When Rick got shot during a pursuit and fell into a coma, Shane visited him in the hospital, brought him flowers, talked to him even though Rick couldn't hear. Then the dead started walking. Shane went back for Rick, tried to save him, but the hospital was being overrun. Soldiers were executing patients. Walkers were everywhere, and Rick's machines had flatlined. No heartbeat, no breath, nothing. Shane made a choice. He barricaded Rick's door to protect his body from walkers, and he left, convinced his best friend was dead. Then he found Lori and Carl, Rick's wife and son, and he did what Rick would have wanted. He protected them, led them to safety, kept them alive when the world was ending. And somewhere in that chaos, in that violence, in those first desperate days, something changed between Shane and Lori. At the camp, Shane was the leader, and he was good at it. He made the hard calls, established perimeter watches, organized supply runs, kept people fed and safe. But Shane's leadership had a foundation that was already cracking. He believed the government would save them, that the military would establish safe zones, that if they just waited, help would come. He refused to consider moving, said it was too risky, that they needed to stay put where rescue teams could find them. Then Rick showed up, alive, reunited with his family, and Shane's entire world collapsed. Look at his face in that moment. That's not jealousy, not yet. That's grief. Because Shane had convinced himself Rick was dead, had built a new life, a new purpose around protecting Rick's family, had fallen in love with Lori, and now the dead man was back. Everything Shane had done, every choice he'd made, every feeling he'd developed, all of it became complicated, questionable, wrong. This is where Shane's descent begins. Not with malice, but with cognitive dissonance, the gap between what he believed and what reality showed him. And speaking of reality, the reality is that this channel is just being born. I'm building this from scratch, diving deep into the psychology of our favorite characters. If you're enjoying the analysis so far, your subscription and like are vital for the algorithm to see the value here. It's one click for you, but it defines the future of the channel for me. When the group reaches Herschel's farm, they discover something horrifying. Herschel has been keeping walkers in his barn, his neighbors, people he loved. He believes they're sick, that they can be cured. Rick wants to respect Herschel's wishes, to talk it through, to find a compromise. Shane says that's suicidal, that those things in the barn aren't people anymore, that keeping them around will get everyone killed. And he's right. Shane opens the barn himself, against Rick's orders, against Herschel's pleas. He forces everyone to face the truth, to shoot the walkers, to see them for what they really are. Then Sophia emerges, Carol's daughter, the little girl they'd been searching for, dead, a walker. She'd been in the barn the whole time. Watch everyone's faces, the horror, the devastation, and watch Shane. He's devastated too. This wasn't some cold calculation, but he still believes he did the right thing, that the truth, no matter how painful, is better than a comforting lie. This is Shane's philosophy, brutal honesty, survival over sentiment, reality over hope. Then comes Randall, a kid from another group, injured during a supply run. Rick's group saves him, but now they have a problem. Randall knows where the farm is. If they let him go, he might lead his group back. His group that Randall claims has 30 men, dangerous men. Shane's solution is simple. Kill him. One bullet. Problem solved. Dale argues against it, says they're not murderers, that execution without trial makes them no better than the walkers, that civilization means something. Rick initially agrees to execute Randall, then changes his mind, decides to drive him out and leave him somewhere far away, as Rick putting the group at risk to preserve his moral high ground, because Shane has already crossed that line.
I'm sorry.
Earlier in the season, he'd sacrificed Otis. They were trapped at a high school, surrounded by walkers, both injured. Shane shot Otis in the leg, and left him to be devoured while he escaped with the medical supplies that saved Carl's life. One life for another. The math was simple, but here's what breaks Shane. Nobody knows what he did. Nobody thanks him for making the hard choice. And when he looks in the mirror, when he touches the scratches on his face from Otis fighting back, he sees something that terrifies him. Not a monster, but someone who's willing to become one. Shane makes his move. He takes Randall into the woods, claiming they're leaving the group together. Then he snaps Randall's neck, kills him without hesitation. Then he smashes his own face against a tree, makes it look like Randall escaped and attacked him, returns to the farm and tells Rick that Randall is loose, armed, dangerous. It's a trap. Shane is luring Rick into the woods to kill him. When they're alone, Shane pulls his gun, tells Rick he's not fit to lead, that he's going to get people killed with his weakness, that Lori and Carl need someone stronger. Shane screams the truth he's been holding back. I'm a better father than you, Rick. I'm better for Lori than you. I'm a better man than you. Not, I was trying to save the group. Not, I did this for survival, but I'm better than you. That's what this was really about. Not survival, ego. Shane couldn't handle being second. Rick talks him down, gets close, and drives a knife into Shane's chest, silencing him forever. Shane comes back as a walker despite never being bitten. This is the first real proof of what Dr. Jenner told Rick at the CDC. Everyone's infected. Death itself turns you. Carl shoots Walker Shane in the head, saving Rick's life. So what do we make of Shane Walsh? Was he right? Was he a villain? Both? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Almost everything Shane said came true. By season 4, Rick was executing prisoners without trial. By season 5, he was ripping a man's throat out with his teeth. By season 6, he was leading preemptive strikes against communities that might be threats. Rick became Shane, just slower, more controlled, more strategic about it. But there's a critical difference. Rick never lost sight of why he was doing it. He was brutal when he needed to be, but he never let brutality become his identity. He could still show mercy, still build alliances, still hope for something better than pure survival. Shane couldn't. Every interaction was a power struggle. Every disagreement was a threat. Every moment Rick showed restraint felt like weakness Shane had to overcome. Shane thrived in the apocalypse because he'd already given up on the idea that people could be anything other than violent and selfish. But that's not strength, that's surrender. Shane's death happened right before the farm was overrun. Carl's gunshot attracted a herd that destroyed everything. Some fans see this as proof Shane was right all along. That sentiment and hesitation got people killed. But that's missing the point. The group survived not because they became like Shane, but because they found balance. They made hard choices when necessary, but never let those choices define who they were. They stayed human in a world that rewarded monsters. Shane's tragedy is that he saw two options: be weak and die, or be strong and survive. He couldn't imagine a third option, being strong enough to stay human. Shane Walsh was right about the world, but he was wrong about people. He saw the apocalypse as permission to drop the mask, to act on every brutal impulse civilization had restrained, to become the alpha he always believed he was. But survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being adaptable, about knowing when to fight and when to build, when to kill and when to trust. Shane never learned that, and it killed him. The man who was right too early, the friend who became the enemy, the survivor who couldn't survive himself. That's Shane Walsh. And maybe his real legacy isn't what he did, but what he taught Rick not to become.